let's talk about more tools. We're going to talk about attaching things, so attaching a canvas and attaching a mesh. Both of them are for reference, and just a couple other tricks. So to attach your reference, you just need to go to Insert and then say Attach Canvas. If you have a ortho projection of whatever you're modeling, that's great. If not, you can always attach the image just for the overall proportion and scale. You just need to pick a face that you will be attaching to. This can be a plane on the origin or a face of a body. That's rarely important. So you can scale it like that. You can rotate it. Pretty easy and straightforward. Move it around. The only thing is you cannot move it on Z axis, like farther away, because you picked this face. If I cancel out, I can create an additional face through using construct, offset that face to make it kind of like further into the distance. And then as I'm inserting the canvas, I'm going to pick that face and attach the image to that face, and if we can still keep modeling on the origin. And then just line it up. Make it, don't need to make it selectable. You can drop the opacity as well. It's pretty convenient. You can flip it. One more thing. Let's say you set it and you start modeling. You will stop seeing the reference. Or you just want to go back and change that canvas, change that image. Just go back into canvases. As you can see, the browser is organized in such a way that all of your bodies are sitting under one category, all of your construction faces are sitting under another category. If you have sketches, you will have a separate folder for sketches. So just go into canvases. It's right there. Right click, edit canvas, and say display through. This way you will be able to model and see the reference at the same time. Super convenient. Or say you just needed to move that around, adjust it a little more. So that goes for just inserting, attaching canvases, any type of reference. Obviously, you can have more than one. Just, let's say you can attach it here. I rarely use it in such way, but for somebody who's really used to modeling this way, or the scale and proportion is super important, I think this is a great way to model whatever you're modeling. At the same time, another way to reference stuff is by having a scan, and the scan will already come in a form of a mesh, usually an OBJ. So it will be like a tessellated object. You can attach meshes pretty much the same way you're attaching canvases. So you're just gonna go into Insert Mesh. I have this mesh of an umbrella here. And this is the size of it. So as of right now, I mean, I can change the unit types, and now it became bigger in relation to what the cube that we had, or make it again smaller, millimeters to centimeters. Rarely matters because we can scale it. But having a reference like this, the only thing you can do with this without converting and going, in detail about how to convert stuff like that, although you certainly can and you can look it up. If you're trying to use this as a reference and let's say just model around it, and you can probably like be very precise and fit a whole cylinder around this. When you're trying to, let's say you're working on some sort of prosthetic and you have a scan of the residual limb, you can just work your way all around it, making it fit perfectly. It's a great tool. So I feel like 3D references is a new thing compared to just having 2D references. So these are the ways you can use attachments and insert meshes. Let's just talk. I already kind of talked about the construction planes. Basically, like I said, if you need a plane offset into a distance from another face or from the origin, you just go into construct, and multiple ways to create them. Most often I will use just an offset face and create this additional construction plane and work there. Very straightforward. You can also, the one that I usually actually use as well is mid plane. You just need to point to one face and then the other, which is supposedly the mirroring face, and it will find the middle of the body and create a construction plane in the middle of that body. Selection filters, also very important, especially now that the Fusion team has introduced a slightly different way that you're working in this space, like the way you select objects. For example, we have this body, and moving a face is not always possible due to some constraints of how it's calculating, and you just wanted to move the whole body. You can see that by default you have to go into this option and switch to body, then reselect the body and then move the body. Selection filters are here to help you with that. If you go to selection priority, and just add the select body as a priority to your quick menu, you can just check that, and now I will only be able to select bodies on my in this scene. I will not be able to select planes. I will not be able to select sketches, anything. And then I'll just go ahead and move it. And then I will uncheck that, and now I can again select everything else. So the same way, you can just go through what type of things you never want to select, or if you need to change this temporarily, you can certainly do so. Another thing good to know is body visibility. A lot of times you'll have multiple bodies to work with. You can just turn them off. They're still in the scene. Turn them back on, or do it from the scene right here. Right click, show hide. Sometimes they're just on the way and they're not doing anything else, so turn it back on. We also have selection sets. So for example, if I have several bodies, right click, and I can create a selection set from that. If let's say I have 100 bodies, out of which I only need to have 34 selected at all time as a single union thing, as a single assembly, I will select those bodies once, create a selection set, and as you can see, now we have a selection set here. If I deselect it, if I go back, I can choose to select the same bodies again. I'm guessing the best example would be some sort of patterning. Let's say I have this body that is being patterned in a circular fashion. On this axis. And I have like 10 of them, but for whatever reason, I constantly only need to select every other one. I will just go ahead and create the selection set out of it. And next time I need to select those specifically, bam. Now, another thing is you already saw me using the right-click menu extensively. Basically, it copies everything that you have in the regular menu. It's your quick access. The only thing different, and you can see you have your create, modify, just like in Maya, basically. The only thing different is you can have gestures, which with time I found that they're pretty useful. A gesture would be, the gestures that I use most is do a redo and undo, which is also here, and you can have Control Z, Control Y for undo, redo. But I'm kind of used to doing the gestures. You right click and you can see that this is undo and this is redo. If you do a quick gesture, as in clicking and dragging to the left, it will undo. Clicking and dragging to the right will redo. Sometimes it's just easier if you're constantly using the right click menu. Another really cool tool that I'm trying to force myself to use more and more is a quick menu. All of the things that you have here and in the right click menu can be called through quick menu by pressing S on the keyboard. So you press S and you have this floating menu, which by default has press, pull, and fillet. But you can search your commands. So for example, shell. And you can add that command to your quick toolbox and just have it floating around. If you're not, anytime you need to do something quick, just press S, find that. Here you go. So one way to find those rarely used things is to go through here, which I'm kind of already used to. Go through the right click or S as a shortcut, and you can just have them right here. And the last thing to talk about in this chapter real quick is folders. Super useful, recently introduced in Fusion 360. When I have several objects, no matter what they are really, I want to have some sort of way to organize them. And let's just recreate the radial symmetry real quick, because that's just the best example of having something that is more than one object arranged into a certain pattern. So this object on the axis. So I can put all of these bodies into one folder, or just put, let's say I want to put this into one folder for my convenience. I'm going to go ahead and use Control to select the rest. Right click. Actually, new group first and say circular pattern. And now just take them and drag and drop them into this new group. Basically, I'm using this as a form of organizing my browser, not having 1,000 bodies all at once under the root structure. If you're working on a wheel, just put it into the new group and say wheel. We will also talk about having components in the next lesson. Components is a little more convenient way to organize because you can freely move and export them separately. But groups, you can think about them as mainly a tool to organize your browser, organize your file structure better, because keeping everything neat is definitely very important.